Good day, my name is Christel from Frans the Klerk, Independent Technical Analyst. Terry wanted us to look at Osino, a gold miner in Namibia, but they are listed in the Toronto Exchange in Canada. Terry, we can see that there is a beautiful cup and handle formation, and I'm rather going to use this clear resistance level where the handle was formed there at $1.50. And we know that cup and handle formations are positive formations, and the optimism around the formation gets confirmed once the neckline changes into a support, and that neckline weighted at $1.50, $1 Canadian. So what is the conservative target of the cup and handle formation? It is the length of the handle projected upwards from the neckline where it was confirmed, and that conservative target takes us back to $1.75, and the full target of that cup and handle is the length of the cup projected upwards from the neckline, which means it can possibly go to $1.94. Only when that resistance waiting at $1, the support of the handle waiting at $1.24 starts to change into a resistance, will the optimism around that formation become obsolete and off the table. Yes, my share is overbought at the moment. My stochastic is sitting at around a 91, which means the probability of the instrument to retrace is there. But take note, Terry, both lines within my stochastic indicator are still pointing upwards, which tells us and implies that the momentum to the top is clearly still in place. That neckline of $1.30, is a strong support that needs to remain in place. My share has beautifully changed the red line, the 40-week moving average, into a support. That means my long-term sentiment towards the share is positive, and that is waiting at $1.30. Yusuf wanted us to look at Exxaro, and I've decided to use some line graphs this week just for a little bit of a change. But Yusuf, we can see that there is an ugly head and shoulder formation. Head and shoulders, left shoulder, head and right shoulder. Head and shoulders, triple top, double top formations are all warning formations appearing at the top of a rally. And that tells us that if the right shoulder waiting at 163 Rand 20 on a Friday close, or the left shoulder waiting at 165.33 does not change into a support by a Friday close, that possible head and shoulder formation is still in play. Only when the neckline of that formation waiting at 151 Rand 68 starts to change into a resistance will the warning be ticked and the formation will be in play. Take note how close my red line, my 40-week moving average waiting at 149 Rand 81 is waiting to that neckline of the head and shoulder, and that it tells us how important that support is. If those support levels, either the neckline or the 40-week moving average, starts to change into a resistance, the warning bells for Exxaro will be on the table. But all optimism will be back when either the right or the left shoulder starts to change into a support again. Yusuf, let me give you the full target of that head and shoulder. It's the length of the head projected downwards from the neckline where the formation will be confirmed, means the possible downward target for Exxaro is 119 Rand 92. But remember, as long as that 40-week moving average remains a support, the long-term sentiment is positive. Yes, my share is oversold. My stochastic is sitting on a 17, and the positive divergence will be confirmed once that blue line, the K line, starts to break upwards through the orange line, and that will tell us optimism. And then maybe if there is enough buyers, those shoulders will be wiped off, and we can maybe see the share back at that close high of 180 Rand 40. Murray wanted to look at the Rand against the British pound. Everybody is so surprised because of the strength of the Rand, but we can see, Murray, that yes, we previously spoken about this cup and handle formation, this inverse cup and handle, massive cup and the handle. And once that neckline's changed into a resistance, that inverse cup and handle formation was confirmed. Very, very important. When my rand tested that 40-week moving average, the long-term gauge for a weekly graph, once it tested that level, waiting at 21 rand and 6 cents, rand against the pound, when it could not change that into a support and kept it a resistance, that's when all the bells for my rand against the pound rang and say the rand will continue to strengthen for the long term as long as that 40-week moving average remains a resistance. Only when the rand starts to change that level into a support again, and at this stage it's waiting at 20 rand 49, will the weakening rand against the pound play be on the cards again. Take note here, Mary, I've got another bigger inverse. I'm going to draw that for you. Inverse cup and handle, massive cup with my handle. And that was recently confirmed once that neckline changed into a resistance. And that weighted at 19 rand 62 against the pound. What is the conservative target of my inverse cup and handle? Same story. Length of the handle, projected downwards from the neckline, meaning can possibly go to 17.99. Full target, full length of the cup, projected downwards from the neckline, meaning my rand can go to 15.73 against the pounds if they do not start to protect the share. Also take note, Mary, my stochastic is in oversold levels, which means the probability that the rand can weaken against the pound is there, but both my lines are still pointing upwards. Wait for that blue line to break upwards through the orange line, and then wait for some indication of a turnaround, a positive candle. This instrument, the currency pair, for the last 3 weeks kept on making new lows, which tells you the strength of the rand is in place. There's no strong support yet. There's no turnaround candle. There's no tweezer bottom where 2 consecutive weeks the rand has found support, or there's no higher lows yet. So we can clearly see that the strengthening trend is in play for the rand. So use those levels to make decision. Keep in mind it is very, very oversold, so it can easily weaken, but the momentum to the top is to the bottom, is in play. First sign of weakness will obviously be at last week's high, and that is waiting at 19.57 against the pound. At 19 rand 57, that's when my first sign of a possible weakening against the pound will be in play, and then that 40-week moving average is your next critical level. Dennis wanted to look at a Capitec short. And I know sometimes, especially if a share has ran so hard and much, the first thing we want to do is start a shorted. And Tinus, you're right. It is very, very overbought, which is a great area to short any instrument because the probability of the instrument to pull back or to retrace is much more likely. However, what worries me about a possible short here on Capitec is this beautiful, depending on assuming you're long here, inverse head and shoulder formation on Capitec with a left shoulder, massive head, and this right shoulder. And that information has already been confirmed. And if I look at the full target of this inverse head and shoulder formation on Capitec, and also take note of that red line, my 40-week moving average that has changed into a support. That is waiting at 1,329 rand 85. What is the full target of my Capitec inverse head and shoulder? Can go back to 2,052 rand and 2 cents. Now, once I would wait for lower highs on the graph, and I would use a candle graph for that. Wait for some sign of resistance. Every week, since about the week of the 26th of April, Capitec continued to make new highs, recent highs. It tells us the buyers are strong enough to keep on supporting the share price to higher levels. Wait for some resistance, wait for a possible turnaround, or wait for lower highs. In other words, the share needs to pull back, bounce again, not go back to the previous record high, and retrace again. Once you get that motion, whether it's on the candles or on a line graph, doesn't matter. It tells you then loss of momentum. It tells you the sellers are keen to take profit on this share. They want to bank some profit here, and especially when it's still here in overbought territory, that would be the ideal place. it would be risky, Tina, so I would maybe wait even for this low, waiting at 1,573 rand 76 to start to consider a possible short on Capitec. But remember, you're doing that against a massive inverse head and shoulder formation. Kevin wanted to look at Absolute Software Corporation. Ticker on the exchange is ABST. They're listed on NASDAQ. And Kevin, this is a beautiful example of lower highs, because we can see every time the share bounced, it did not go back to that previous record high. Every time the share bounced, it could not go back there. And this high, waiting at $14.57, is a little bit lower than the previous one at $14.96, which is lower at that top at $15.86. It implies loss of momentum. So on a line graph, the next lower high would be confirmed when that neckline, that support, waiting at $13.55, starts to change into a resistance. Only when this share, Absolute Software Corporation, starts to consolidate again above the support waiting at $14.96, can I assume that the momentum to the top will continue again. Take note here, Kevin, it's very close to your 40-week moving average. In the past, you can see the buyers protected that moving average. That was a good indication. But once that 40-week moving average starts to change into resistance, the warning bells will start to go up. What is interesting here is it is oversold after a massive rally, and it looks like it even wants to go lower. So if the buyers does not start to protect the share price, it will be seen as very negative when a share at this high after such a rally in an oversold stochastic territory zone continue to decline. That will be seen as very negative. Your 40-week moving average rating is $12.87. That is a critical level, Kevin, that needs to remain a support in order to sustain the momentum to the top for Absolute Software Corporation.